Hey everyone, welcome to episode 212 of the All Dolphins podcast with this bad boy here. I discovered this yesterday and I may never stop doing it. This is
you just keep showing it off. I want hearts
stop.
instead of mints. That's what I want from now on.
There you go. It is February 1st, 2024 as we turn the calendar over. It's going to start getting interesting. This is the time when the first days when the franchise tag and the transition tags can be applied. The deadline's March 5th. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the exact day. Sometime in February where teams can start applying the tag. I want to somewhere in the middle of the month or towards the 20th or something like that.
Yeah, but a real smart strategy is to hold off until March 5th, just because, you try to get your negotiatings. If you put the tag on, then immediately that is the price point. So anyway, let's do your seasons.
Yes, we didn't do 2011 yesterday because we had the Dolphin podcast
when podcast worlds unite.
There you go. When Dolphin podcasts unite with Simon Clancy and Alfredo Arteaga. We will continue doing those. Don't know who's next. We have some thoughts, but nothing finalized as of yet. So we didn't do 2011, which was a year of the lockout, where the Dolphins drafted Mike Pouncey in the first round of the playoffs. Tony Sparano was fired at the end of the year. Todd Bowles finished out. Todd Bowles, current Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach, and the Dolphins wound up going 6-10, I believe. No, or Matt Moore came in, replaced an injured Chad Henne, was very good down the stretch. 6-3 in the final 9 games, and I will make the argument he should have been given way more of a shot to win the starting job in 2012. And now we get to 2012.
Hold on. I want to talk about 2011 because I would argue to you that was one of the best Dolphins team I ever covered before this season, primarily because you had a lot of good frontline players. Brandon Marshall, everybody knows how I feel about Brandon Marshall. You had Devon Best, you had Brian Hartline, you had Anthony Fasano, you had Charles Clay, very good offensive weaponry. You had Reggie Bush in the backfield. Reggie Bush was a 1,000-yard back, and then Matt Moore. The reason why that team struggled earlier in the season, Brian Daboll was the offensive coordinator. He had just taken over. Literally, they had no offseason because of the NFL lockout, and they were not able to install the offense. And that's part of the reason why that team got off to an 0-7 start. Once Chad Henne had gotten out the way, Matt Moore was taking over. Him and Brandon Marshall just started developing hand signals and codes and things of that nature. The offense started to take off, and they either lost close games or blew teams out. Mm-hmm. And won, I believe, 6 of the final 9 games. Yep,
6-3 down the stretch. And Matt Moore was balling. He was playing some really good ball.
Matt Moore is another guy I want on the All Dolphins podcast.
Love Matt Moore. And they almost beat the Cowboys on Thanksgiving that year. They lost on the last second field goal. But it wound up being a lost season. Come back in 2012, the Dolphins select Ryan Tannehill with the 8th overall selection in the draft. Not a fan of the pick at the time or now. This was Joe Philbin also his first year, also the first.
All right, what did you want? Hold on, wait. Time out. You're not a fan of the pick.
I hated the pick. I didn't want a quarterback that high. There was no. It was Andrew Luck and nobody else. RG3 went 2nd overall, and who knows what his career would have looked like.
So what you would have went Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson. What do you want?
I don't know.
Nick Foles,
Darrell Revis Island, Darrell Revis, maybe. Who else?
So you wanted to roll with Matt Moore?
Absolutely. I felt he had shown enough at the end of 2011 that he deserved a shot, and the Dolphins passed. I'm going to look it up real quick. The Dolphins passed some really good players to force Ryan Tannehill, who I don't think anybody in their right mind would have thought that dude needed to be the 8th overall pick, with all due respect.
All kinds of tools raw needed to be developed, and you never know. I mean, the same thing was said about Patrick Mahomes. Raw tools need to be developed. Same thing was said about Josh Allen. Raw tools need to be developed.
Time out. I mean, Josh Allen, you're talking about a physical freak, so he doesn't compute. Ryan
Tannehill has upper echelon physical traits.
Pat Mahomes was like a baseball prospect type pitcher. That's the kind of athlete he was. The only thing is he played in a wacky offense as Texas Tech, and can he play in a structured offense? And their game is a little bit wild. Okay, big whoop. So the Dolphins could have had, instead of Tannehill, Luke Kuechly, Stephon Gilmore, Fletcher Cox. It wasn't the Darrelle Revis draft. I'm mistaken. But they could have had Kuechly, Stephon Gilmore, Fletcher Cox. Why are you shaking your head? No. Instead of a complete force of a guy who had been a wide receiver at Texas A&M, who I don't think anybody saw as a slam dunk first-round pick, quarterback choice. This guy's going to be a star. It was all along, this guy's a project, and you have somebody on your team.
Well, hold on. Okay. We're of the opinion, and both of you have shared this opinion, that you keep picking a quarterback till you finally get that dude, right?
And not at the cost of landing a complete stud with the 8th overall. You don't pick a project with the 8th
There's
overall.
No guarantee you're going to get a stud at the 8th overall pick. You can pick a dud at the 8th overall pick. You can pick a Deion Jordan. You never know. You can pick a Charles Harris. You never. Don't act like everything is given to you.
By the way, Luke Kuechly coming out of college was a complete checks all the boxes, slam dunk, that guy can't miss player. And
did they need a linebacker? No, they didn't, because they had Kevin Burnett, Carlos Dansby, and Cole Misi.
Stephon Gilmore was a complete stud.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if he wasn't the slam dunk that Kuechly was, but he was a complete stud. And again, Omar, it wasn't the idea.
I'm picking a good cornerback. I'm picking a quarterback that I think can be a franchise player, and he wasn't, but I didn't know that at the time. Over a stud quarterback, over a stud linebacker, over a stud defensive tackle. And you have no guarantee that you were going to get those studs.
Okay, except that now you can't use that argument and then bitch about the Dolphins sending a 2nd and a 5 to the Cardinals for Josh.
We knew he was a dud, though. We knew he was a dud.
Then the Dolphins should have known, along with the entire scouting community, that Ryan Tannehill was meh as a quarterback prospect.
He had started 19 games. Are we really going to fight about Ryan Tannehill here?
Yes, we are. And then the Dolphins compounded their mistake by hanging on to the dude. And by the way, I like Ryan Tannehill as a guy, but then they compounded with the problem by hanging on to him for 7 years, which is why I have nightmares right now. I wake up in a sweat that we're doing the same thing all over again with a quarterback
who
is better than Tannehill, but still right now has shown a ceiling.
Okay, let me ask you this question, and I want you to be candidly honest with me.
Like I'm not always.
Yeah, like you're not always. The Pittsburgh Steelers right now sign Ryan Tannehill to a 2-year, $20 million deal. Does he not make the Pittsburgh Steelers better?
No, I don't.
Why not?
Wait, he's an upgrade over Ryan Pickett or the play. He's not giving them better play than they got from Mason Rudolph at the end of the season.
Mason Rudolph sucks. Not that Ryan Tannehill is good.
Mason Rudolph, I completely agree with you, but Mason Rudolph played well down the stretch, and Ryan Tannehill is not giving him better QB play than what they got. I'm
sorry. I completely disagree with you, and I'm not even a Tannehill fan. Pittsburgh is a consistent top 20 quarterback away from being a good team again. And hopefully they go get Kirk Cousins or they go get Russell Wilson. I don't know how much Russell Wilson has left in the tank, to be honest with you. But hopefully they fix that with a veteran quarterback. And I'm not ruling Ryan Tannehill out. Hell, Jimmy Garoppolo could help them. I would love to see them to have a more established quarterback. And Tannehill can get it done. He's not great, but he can get the job done. No,
not anymore. I mean, he's not been – dude, he's insanely inconsistent. And I don't want to spend too much time on him because this is the All Dolphins podcast. Not the All Tannehill podcast, but
we only talked about him for 7 years.
Correct. And 7, you had probably 3 years too many. And again, this is why I don't want the Dolphins to make the same mistake. That's part of my position. Okay, let's move on to the news of the day, and it involves coaching hires, the defensive coordinator search. The latest is very interesting name that popped up now as another person who's going to be interviewed or was going to be interviewed on Thursday. That's Chris Shula. If you're a Dolphin fan and you don't recognize the last name, don't call yourself a Dolphin fan because you're not. Chris Shula is the grandson of legendary coach Don Shula, the son of David Shula, who coached for the Dolphins, became the head coach of the Bengals. And Mike Shula, another one of Don Shula's sons, also coached for the Dolphins. Chris Shula has been with the Rams for the past 7 years, never been a DC. coached the secondary in 2022 when his star player was
Jalen Ramsey.
Yep. He'd be a good one to interview these days if Jalen would give us more. He actually could give us only 2 minutes. We could ask him about Brandon Staley and Chris Shula, who he played under, because they're both among the 7 defensive coordinator candidates who have been identified. One who has not been identified, who Omar thinks would be a great choice for the Dolphins, is Mike Vrabel, and can't argue with what Omar is saying or wrote for alldolphins.com.
Yeah, I wrote a column up alldolphins.com. The 8 head coaches have been hired throughout the NFL, and Mike Vrabel is the guy who was left without a seat once the NFL's musical chairs was over. I think he is a phenomenal coach. I thought teams would be lining up to hire him. Thought he got a raw deal in Tennessee. Obviously, they traded away a lot of pieces, and they're basically trying to purge their roster and restart a new organization. And there's no shame in that. But he got sabotaged for the last 2 years, and that is what led to his first 2 losing seasons in his 7-year tenure.
Injuries also. Dolphin fans want to talk about how badly they were hurt. Look at Tennessee the last 2 years. Woo!
Yeah. So Vrabel, proven he's a defensive coordinator, defensive mind. And what I love about him, 2 things that I think makes him a good fit for the Miami Dolphins. One, he's not necessarily a graybeard, but he's got head coaching experience, and he can help Mike McDaniel on the areas of weaknesses. And what I've always said, and people need to keep this in mind, where coaches end up making mistakes are the things that they're not prepared for or that they don't have expertise in. And that's where another head coach would come in and help you benefit in terms of figuring out how to handle that situation, give you some context. And then obviously he's a defensive coordinator that will allow you to have a hands-off approach on your defense. Mm-hmm. And not just that, but he's coached one of the top 5 most physical teams in the NFL for probably the last decade. Yep. Consistently, they are a physical team. And if you add that physical side to who the Miami Dolphins are as an organization, it would certainly benefit you and help you take the next step. My 2024 priority for this organization is to add that physical punch you in the mouth Baltimore Ravens mentality. And I'm not necessarily certain that gets done with just Mike McDaniels here. I think you need a culture injection, and that would be Mike Vrabel.
Are you suggesting that maybe they were too much of a finesse team last year? Is that what you're saying?
I might be able to say that there is a finesse element that came out and didn't allow them to be at their best at optimal times, especially when facing physical bullies. And that was the Baltimore Ravens, that was the Buffalo Bills, that was the Kansas City Chiefs. Those were all teams that were physical bullies. And you might have wilted to that physicality. Might have. Just a tad.
Maybe. Dan Quinn is the one who got the last job, the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator hired by the Washington Commanders. Former Dolphin assistant. Omar, were you aware of the fact that there are now 5 former Dolphin assistant coaches who are head coaches in the NFL?
Can I name them? Let's see. Todd Bowles.
That would be one.
In Cincinnati, what's his name?
I just gave you Dan Quinn, so that's 2.
Dan Quinn. And in Cincinnati, what is his name?
Gotta have his name.
Okay. I can't. I'm not gonna remember his name because
son-in-law of Mike Sherman.
What is his name?
Zach Taylor.
There you go, Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor. Damn. Dan Quinn was you said that. You gave me that. Okay, I'm out. I'm empty.
Dan Campbell. How
damn it, Dan Campbell. How do I forget Dan the man? Go ahead.
And Brian Dable.
Totally forgot. Yep. I just said about him.
Yes, and you talked about him too. And in addition, there's also a 6th head coach who was not a Dolphin assistant coach, but Dolphin player. That, of course, being Doug Peterson.
God damn, I forget that.
The quarterback when the Dolphins won that November 14th, 1993 game that gave Don Shula the record for most career coaching victories. And I point that out because with all the coaching vacancies now filled, that means Bill Belichick's not coaching in the NFL in 2024. As I mentioned earlier, given his
curmudgeonous ways.
Beautifully put. The fact that he hasn't had much success post Brady and the fact that he's 71 or 72 years old, I'm not so sure that's not it for him, which means Don Shula's record is going to be safe. Because I don't know that anybody else is going to coach long enough with that kind of consistent success to threaten it.
I don't think Belichick ever coaches again in the NFL.
No, I agree. I concur. Let's move on to a couple of other things. Pro Bowl festivities or games or skill competition is Thursday night. And I know we're shaking our head. I only bring that up because it's award season, all-star game time and all that. We have NFL honors next Thursday, February 8th. Today, and those awards are voted on by a media panel. Today, the Sporting News announced their awards, which are voted on by players themselves or coaches. And it's noteworthy that Tyreek Hill won the Offensive Player of the Year award. And it was Tua Tagovailoa and not Damar Hamlin who was named Comeback Player of the Year.
What?
Mm-hmm. The players decided, yep, Hamlin's a great story and it's very inspirational.
He's alive.
The dude barely played.
Interesting. So do you think Tua has a realistic shot to be Comeback Player of the NFL in 2024?
In terms of the media, there's been so much smoke and talk about how it's Hamlin's to lose. For some reason, I don't think writers can't get out of the mode of it's such a great story. It's so inspirational and all that. Even though, like, for me, I've said all along is how can you be Comeback Player of the Year when you almost don't play? I mean, if they were a Comeback Person of the Year would be maybe different than Comeback Player of the Year. So, but cool to see.
Mm-hmm. I honestly don't know what to even think about that. I did not expect Tua to be named Comeback Player of the Year, and in fact, I'm not necessarily sure he would be my number one pick. Joe Flacco just led his team to the playoffs after coming off the couch. So
he was interviewed about that, and he was like, "Why would they give it to me? I was just some old dude sitting on the couch." Literally, what you just said. He didn't think he belonged in the conversation. I think Tua was a very worthy candidate, again, because there was some thought that maybe his career was in jeopardy or maybe even done last offseason. You could make a case for Austin Jackson from a Dolphin standpoint for Austin Jackson.
Yeah, we know it's going to a quarterback. Come on, if it's going to anybody.
Well, Damar Hamlin's not a quarterback, but his story was.
Yeah, I mean, but he died on the field. So
yep.
I think there's some room for benefit of doubt. Your shoulder is halfway off and it's driving me insane. Let me address something else that I wrote and put up, and actually Poupard is splitting it into a two-part series. I think the starting block for NFL free agency for the Miami Dolphins is clearly about creating cap space and figuring out how you're going to go through that mathematical arithmetic of clearing cap space. And I make the argument that you're not clearing $52 million in cap space. You've got to clear 70 to 75, primarily because you're going to have to spend $19.7 million for a franchise tag that you have to use on Christian Wilkins on March 5th, which is before the new year begins, to lock him in instead of allowing him to be exposed to the free agent market. This will not be easy. And it will be a tough decision that they're going to have to make. And this is part of the column that I wrote. The Dolphins already have a very poor history of paying defensive linemen that they've drafted and developed. There are some exceptions. I guess they didn't draft Zach Sealer, but they did develop him. So that's one of the exceptions. Cameron Wake was one of the exceptions, but even then they paid both arguably below market value deals, because right now, if I told you you're going to have to pay Christian Wilkins $20 million and you're paying Zach Sealer $8 million, you would look at me like you have a third eye, because something is off about that situation. And
yeah, and again, I'm not I don't disagree with the premise that the Dolphins need to hang on to Christian Wilkins because he's a foundational piece. But again, how many good players can you get if you sacrifice Christian Wilkins and don't pay him $20 million a year? Does that allow you to keep both Connor Williams and Robert Hunt? Whereas if you put that money on Wilkins, you can't keep both. And can you keep Williams, Hunt, and ABG for the $20 million it would cost you to keep Christian Wilkins? And wouldn't that be a better trade-off?
I don't know the right answers to it. I did break down all of the factors. It was a 1,400 word piece. Poupard slapped me around and said I need to break it into two. And it will, one half is up now and the other half is tomorrow when I'm going to show you what his peers are making and let you conclude what is the dollar value. It is a tough decision that they're going to have to make, along with so many other tough decisions. And that's what we're going to be here for at alldolphins.com, addressing all of these tough decisions and the ramifications that come with it and helping you as a fan. We don't know what the organization is going to do, but they've got some tough choices to make. And this franchise is at a crossroads right now, 2024.
Yep.
And every decision that you make determines what route you go and what direction you're headed in. So we're doing our best job to break these decisions down and help you sort of get an understanding of all the complexity that comes with it.
And one thing I wrote for alldolphins.com was I ranked the Dolphin free agents in terms of significance without financial considerations. Because that could be a different story in itself. Because then this is where how much money do you want to sign to a certain player. But in terms of value to the franchise, I think we can all agree the Dolphins have 26 players scheduled to become UFAs. I think we pretty much all can agree that Christian Wilkins would be number one. And then behind him, I think we can all agree would be one of the two linemen, Robert Hunt or Connor Williams, depending on how you want to slice him.
And I am uncomfortable slicing them, and here's the reason why I'm uncomfortable slicing them. I would argue to you that Connor Williams was the number one offensive lineman on the Dolphins roster, but I will also argue to you, I don't know when he'll be healthy. Might be October. And will he be the same player? We already know the snapping wasn't phenomenal, but we love the athleticism that allowed him to get to the second level and make impact plays. Well, will he have that athleticism coming off his knee injury? I don't have the answer to that. Do you have the answer to that?
No, I don't. Nor do the Dolphins. The Dolphins will find out. And I'm certainly not going to go through the entire list, but because of the uncertainty with Williams.
Oh, why not? Why not?
I'm going to go through the entire list, but I had Hunt over Williams again because of the uncertainty with what does Williams look like.
But you know what the debate will be in a draft room. What's more important, a right guard or a center? Not the draft room, but
I address that as well. Positionally, Connor Williams is more important in terms of ability of the player. I mean, I know you're like this with Connor Williams. Come on, do your thing, Arts. There you go. You're like this with Connor Williams.
Connor Williams ain't my friend. I'm like this with Robert Hunt. I love Rob. Like
no, Rob. As a player like this, I'll teach you how to do it one of these days. I won't because I have no clue. I just did it yesterday and it popped up.
One day it's gonna give me hearts. I'm too dark. That's what it is.
Virtual background or what? But I love it. Anyway, in terms of player ability, I mean, I think they're both upper echelon players at their position. Center is more vital than a guard. Tougher to find than a guard. Completely agree with you there. But then you on the flip side is you have Connor's kind of uncertain health status when he comes back. So, I mean, I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't quibble with anybody who would say, "Oh, you're crazy putting Hunt over Williams." Yeah, that would be fine. I think again, Christian Wilkins is clearly at the bottom of the pile. I will give you the top ones, the top three, and the bottom three.
I think you have Andrew Van Ginkel a little high, and here's the reason why. I don't think he's, based on what I was told, It was a Liz Frank injury. That's not a, oh, he's healthy. So I do think that
C.
it's going.
Williams, comma Preston. Sorry,
What'd you say?
C. Williams, comma Preston.
Yeah.
What he had when he got hurt, and then catching that touchdown pass from Tua in the end zone at Arizona. That's what he wound up having.
Yeah, I know.
And he never came back properly. And part of it was maybe there were other issues as well.
Yeah,
but
his mental wasn't where it needed to be. He fell into the Vic Fangio realm of why Miami's not a great place for players.
Playing in the UFL this spring, by the way. Yes, resurfaced.
I hope he continues to resurface and actually commits himself to the game now that he's been banished from it. I would argue to you, and it's not because I want to fight with you, even though I do want to fight with you. Kendall Lamb would probably be a top priority, and I might consider putting him ahead of Andrew Van Ginkel from this standpoint. Kendall Lamb gave you some stability in your offensive line, and even though he isn't a starter and certainly told me he will not be playing for that minimum salary that the Dolphins pay, he'll retire before he does that. If I'm going to have Teron Armstead on my offensive line, which I do believe that you're going to have Teron Armstead on your offensive line, I need to make sure that I have a very, very, very established, capable, competent backup, or else my whole line goes to turd. Do you not understand that? Do you not understand where I'm coming from?
Oh, I get it, but you're acting like Andrew Van Ginkel is not going to be a starter from day one if he re-signs, because Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips more than likely are missing the start of the season.
Is he going to be healthy?
Who?
Andrew Van Ginkel.
Yeah. Okay. Again,
I'm
his agent is on the record as saying he'll be fine for the offseason. Of course,
that's what agents do.
That's his proper thing for his agent to say when he's heading into the free agency market.
I need to see a video of Andrew Van Ginkel running and cutting before I'm like, oh yeah, he'll be ready for the offseason. We need to see that in March when free agency bidding begins. Okay, and I don't think we will.
That's fine, but even if he doesn't participate in the offseason, to me, he should be ready for training camp. And again, because of what's going on with Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, I think he's more significant than Kendall Lamb.
Okay, touche.
But I certainly see the point with Kendall Lamb, especially again with Teron Armstead not getting any younger.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing: you don't do Kendall Lamb. What do you do?
But the flip side to that is, again, the Dolphins have salary cap issues up the wazoo, and if Kendall Lamb wants, first of all, logically, Kendall Lamb's going to shop around to see if he can get a starter job. Would he not? Because he comes back to the Dolphins, he's not starting. That's number one. And then number two, what's he going to be looking for monetarily? And is it going to be more than, because you said he's not coming back at the veteran minimum? Okay, well, the Dolphins have only so much money to pass around.
Would you do 2 for $6 for Kendall Lamb?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's fair. I think that's, and now he might get better and do better. And considering how desperate so many NFL teams were for offensive line help, brother, go get your money. And you know, I have had private conversations with him that I don't necessarily want to make public, but Kendall doesn't need money. He wants respect. Now, he's not playing for peanuts in his mind, but he wants respect. And I think this organization showed him that respect. Whoever's pursuing him will show him that respect. But now it has to match with an offer. I personally think 2 for $6 with maybe a $2 million signing bonus and keeps it manageable is that respect. Now, who knows if he can get more on the market? But I think he would be top 5 of my priority list. And I'm not watering down what Andrew Van Ginkel is worth or what he's going to get. And Andrew Van Ginkel would, without a doubt, be a top priority for me to re-sign. What is it that you are eating? What is that?
Drinking iced coffee.
Oh, okay. The addiction you have. You caffeine addicts.
This is me and coffee.
I you know, I like Van Ginkel. We don't even know what they're going to be running next year. We're supposed to run in a 4-3. then where does Van Ginkel fit? I don't know.
See, this is why I don't expect a seismic change in the defensive scheme, because again, they're all in. They're not rebuilding anything. So
that means you got to find somebody who runs Vic Fangio or this hybrid 3-4, and
yes,
that locks me in, and I don't know if I'm comfortable being locked in. I want the best. What's supposed Mike Vrabel says, I want to take this job, but we're running a 4-3, and we're stop being a little punk. And we're gonna beef up the trenches, and we're gonna be an aggressive 4-3 defense. You don't have the foundation for a 4-3 or a 3-4. You are starting fresh, sir. So, what
are they talking? What? Well, first of all, they played the most. The alignment they were in the most last year was 2-4-5. So let's forget about 3-4-4-3. It was 2-4-5 basically.
Okay. Well, you don't have the alignment for 2-4-5. Like
not if you lose Christian.
Yeah. You don't. I mean, Zach Sealer, and this is what I wrote in my Mike Vrabel piece. I don't necessarily look at this defense as an attractive defense, because right now, as it presently sits, you've got Zach Sealer, 2 injured, pretty good pass rushers in Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. You're gonna have the inside linebacker David Long Jr., and you got Jalen Ramsey, Javon Holland. That's like what, 5 pieces? Everything else is a mystery. So you want to do run 4-5-3, you want to run 3-4, you want to run 2-4-5. It don't matter. You don't have any of the pieces for any of them,
dude. Except right now is they have no bodies on the defensive line. They don't have no legit.
Yeah, I know. They have Zach Sealer and Brandon Peely.
Like I said, yeah.
I get it. There's work to be done. The thing is, are you going to hire a defensive coordinator and allow him to do what he wants to do? Or are you going to hire a defensive coordinator and handcuff them? And I think that might be the genuine question that a lot of these guys are asking. And it might dictate whether or not I want to take this job. Would it not? If you're forcing something on me, do you think I want to take this job when I have other options and opportunities and avenues that I can go to?
By the way, I'm looking at the game book here. The Titans opened in a 3-3-5 set against the Dolphins. But here's the thing, though. Whoever they interview, they're probably going to tell them, look, this is what our personnel looks like.
It ain't a 3-4, it ain't a 4-3, it ain't a 2-4-5. It's nothing. Their personnel sucks. It does right now.
Well, because they have so many free agents, it doesn't suck so bad that they were 4th in the NFL in total defense at one point last year.
Finished 10th. But then half of those guys are free agents.
Well,
we're injured.
And that's the issue. And then I'm sure the Dolphins, whatever conversations they have, are probably telling their candidates, yeah, this guy's going to be back. This guy's going to be back. That guy, we don't know.
They can't tell their candidates that. Nope.
Sure they can.
No, they cannot. No, they cannot. You cannot sell me something that you are absolutely not certain that you can deliver on.
You actually don't think, if you actually don't think the Dolphins would have an inkling as right now as to which free agents are coming back?
Absolutely none. Zero. Right now, they're at the Senior Bowl and they're having meetings and they're getting the price points for players, and they're hearing, they're trying to figure out what the word on the street is in terms of who's looking for what and what agents think they can get for what players. It's a long process, and it just began this week. But they have no idea.
No, because you're assuming that they haven't had any conversations with the agents of their own players during the season and right after the season.
That's fair, but the agents of their own players haven't had conversations with other teams yet, which begins this week.
Correct.
And the game of the price might change.
But there are certain players who will tell their agents, make it work with that particular team. Without leaving like a ton of money on the table, make it work with that team.
Without leaving, that's a key word, without leaving a ton of money on the table.
Obviously, nobody's going.
Yeah. Everybody's going to say, I want to be here. I want to finish here. I want to play for the team that I started with. As I wrote in my column, Christian will say the same thing, but behind the closed doors, Christian's like, pay me my money. Run me my money.
Correct.
And you don't run them the money, I'll see you.
Correct. No, I fully understand that. No, as I was beginning to say, is I encourage everyone to check out the entire list on alldolphins.com. I gave away my top three, the bottom three, and this is going to hurt you, Omar, and I'm sorry in terms of significance of it's two wide receivers and a tight end, and that's Chase Claypool, Robbie Chosen, and Tyler Croft.
Listen, you got guys on here where you're breaking it down, like Nick Needham and your homeboy Cedric Wilson, Brandon Jones, Isaiah Wynn. I think is a little low on your list, by the way, sir. I think Isaiah Wynn, if he's healthy, was a very adequate starter.
No, and I understand that, but can we? Because I'm here, I'm ready for this because I've heard so much. Like, can we not pretend the dude was like on his way to the Hall of Fame? I understand he gave the Dolphins better guard play than maybe they'd had before in the last couple of years, but can we simmer down a little bit? For example,
first round pick, it wasn't a disappointment.
I get that former first round pick that the Patriots were like, bye bye, see ya.
Well, you act like the Patriots are great talent evaluators.
They usually are on the offensive line. Where they completely suck is at wide receiver. No, they usually do a good job on the offensive line. And also, let's not pretend, with all due respect, the play on which you got hurt is a play you got rolled over in that Philly game. So I didn't completely diss him. I just don't. I think the notion of Isaiah Wynn got a little bit overblown as he got out of the lineup. Personally speaking, I mean, he's a fine player, but again,
I'm good with just fine.
I don't know if I go this far here.
More hearts for the people. Anything else? Any other stories that we need to address or talk about before? Are we doing a live tomorrow? I don't know.
We should do a live once a week. We should do a live.
Yeah, I mean Saturday's a big. Oh, I'm having my daughter.
Saturday, we're taking the weekend off. That's all right.
Big boss says we're taking the weekend off. Okay.
You don't want to take the weekend off?
Yeah, I got daddy daughter date.
Oh, see, there you go.
So that means that leaves a live for tomorrow, then, sir.
Yeah, maybe Super Bowl Sunday. We got to come up with something perhaps that day, but for the most part, count on us not doing a ton on the weekend, other than obviously the weekend of the draft and mini camp as well. When there's things going on, and if there's major news breaking over the weekend, we'll do a special edition. But for now, I think we covered pretty much all that needs to be covered for today.
All right. You know how to find all our work, alldolphins.com. No paywall, no subscription, no monthly charge of $12.99 and $19.99. We are free, the big FRE. You know how to find us on the podcast, All Dolphins Podcast.
Did you just say FRE?
FREE, yeah. It's free. It's free.
You were missing any of the It's fra.
It's fra. All right. Thank you guys for watching. We appreciate everybody who, even if you just give this a 2-minute listen, we appreciate it because it definitely helps our algorithm. Give us a like too. That helps our algorithm as well. We're out here struggling, trying to eat in this podcast world. And we thank you for your continued support. If you haven't checked out an earlier episode, I believe it was 210, when podcast worlds unite, we also addressed
2011,
2010.
211 was the when Dolphin Podcasts Unite. Episode
and 211 is us addressing Vic Fangio's alleged claims, because they're not specifically coming from Vic Fangio, about Miami's culture, and there is some merit, there is some credence to it. So we devil in that in 2010. But on that note, we are out. We will see you tomorrow. I definitely appreciate everybody for your continued support and watching these episodes because it's so important. Thank you again, and we will see you tomorrow.